Novo doba je jedna od retkih platformi, pored emisije Troglasnog uvaženog kolege Ognjena Karanovića, u kojoj može da se čuje glas i mišljenje ljudi bliskih američkoj administraciji i trenutnog predsednika Donalda Trampa. Zato su sa mnom danas ovde u ovoj emisiji mladi ljudi iz odseka za međunarodne odnose Nacionalne federacije mladih republikanaca, Džejk Hofman i Mišel Sasuni, koji će sa mnom analizirati trenutnu situaciju u Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama, predstojeće lokalne izbore na kojima su bili posmatrači i sva ostala pitanja od značaja za srpsko-američke odnose. Hello, Jake. Hello, Michelle.
Hi.
Glad to have you here with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, always a pleasure, and thank you for accepting my invitation to host this show. Are you first time here in Serbia? How do you like our country, and what's the occasion that you came here?
So this is my first time in Serbia, and I came here to observe the elections. I've very much enjoyed the country so far, and it's been a really incredible experience.
This is now my second time in Serbia. I came in 2023 as well, and I've also come here to help observe the election as an international observer from the Young Republicans over in America. We're from Florida, and I've very much enjoyed my time here. You have a very hospitable country, a very hospitable host, and everyone's been very good to me. Great food, and all the experience of seeing an election firsthand it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that everybody say always that the food is great.
Yeah.
Most of the foreign people who come here always have a good compliments. So, what are your experience with the local elections in Serbia? I mean, were both of you now observers in the elections? Where were you? Which places? And what are your how to say
takeaways?
Yeah.
So we were together during this time, and we went to 3 different municipalities in Kula area, and my experience was that there was just so many people observing. Both the ruling party and the opposition parties, they were all watching everything that was going on. It felt like there was 10 people in the room at a time, and then 50 people outside, and there's so many people with eyes on their process. And then there's the process itself, which is very different than America. There are a lot of people in America who would love to go back to doing one ballot, one piece of paper into a box. There's a lot of Americans who would love that. Instead, in America, we've got the electronic process, and we have the mail-in ballots where we just send to everybody's house, and who knows what happens in the post office when it comes back and forth. And so every election, every country has its own set of problems. But from what I saw during my time here, again, I think a lot of people in America would be happy to go back to the process you have here in Serbia.
Yeah. What are your impressions?
I thought that, everybody seemed really enthusiastic about the elections, the local people, which I thought was really good to see so many people engaged. And like you said, that there were so many observers. At one point, there was like almost standing room only for observation of the elections, which is good. But when I watched the process, it seemed like a well-oiled machine. They go and they have the UV light, and then they take the ID, then it's like gets checked off. Then they do they spray with the visible ink, and so there are so many checks and balances to ensure that the elections are secure. And in America right now, we're arguing over for federal elections if we can have voter ID. People are saying that just to have an ID, showing an ID to vote, is oppressive somehow. Which
it's
oppressive. That's what Democrats. This is what the Democrats say, and to me it's insane that you need an ID for almost anything, but to vote for one of the most important things for a nation, they're saying that we don't need it. We can't.
Don't you need like an
have it.
ID for taking an alcohol in the
yes,
stores or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, you should have an ID to vote.
Yeah.
More logic than taking an alcohol.
Very logical. Yeah, it's very logical, and somehow right now in Congress, it's called the SAVE Act. It's being fought against.
And our rules are different in all 50 states.
Yeah.
So this is what makes it even more complicated for people to understand internationally. In our state in Florida, we do a much better job than other states. But then you have states people don't know this. We have Washington State, Oregon, some of these places. You cannot go into a polling station and vote. They have no more physical voting, only by mail. So that you have no checks and balances. You have no observers over what's happening with the ballot, who is filling it out, anything. We have entire states in the United States where this is the process. We just mail the votes to everybody and hope they come back. And you cannot go into a polling station. So sometimes I think it's, again, if there are people that are watching this, that are questioning the elections, questioning the issues, you would rather be in this situation here where we have 20 people watching somebody fill out a ballot versus in America and some of these states where you have no eyes on any of the process of voting.
So what would you say, that the election process in Serbia is better than the US? Should like the USA maybe take something from Serbia?
The part where they look at the IDs.
The part where they look at the ID. Let's start there. It's like,
let's talk about the other stuff.
Yeah, we don't even need the invisible ink. We should just start with the ID, and I would be happy with that.
And the one thing I like that you do in this election here is you do on Sundays.
Yeah.
In America, we do on Tuesdays. So everybody is at work, and this is like
it's part of the tradition, right?
It is tradition, but
something from like the 18th century, 19th or something like that.
But there's a few things that America could take, right? So doing it on a weekend to help people get out to vote. Going back to paper ballots in all of these different states, making sure that you are looking at an ID. This is a good thing that you guys do here that we don't necessarily do. And, we have a lot of questions over the electronic systems that we use in America too, and the EU. They use them as well. And we've had a lot of issues with them. They're very susceptible to hacking. Just yesterday, when we were observing the election in Palm Beach, where I'm from, they had a man who was arrested for trying to steal he did steal the encryption key for one of the voting machines in Palm Beach, where they Democrats flipped the area where Mar-a-Lago is. So this is like a big news now, because they're like saying that, the Democrats took over the area that Mar-a-Lago is in Palm Beach. Turns out there's going to be a very big election law that people are going to be looking at right now. But this all stems from the fact that you can steal a key to get the codes to go into the electronic machine, and you don't have that in Serbia.
Was it important for them in Mar-a-Lago because there's Trump's mansion?
Yeah. I talked to people here in Serbia, and they said, didn't the Democrats win in Trump's district? And I said, how do you know about this? I was like, this is like a small election.
Somebody asked you that.
Yeah.
Because people in Serbia know a lot,
They do.
They follow a lot of elections and generally international politics.
Yeah, see, that in America, people don't follow international politics at all. Most people probably can't point to Serbia on the map, and it's really sad.
What's that thing, like Europe is one big country, or like a federation of countries like
pretty
US?
much. Yeah, if I told somebody we're going to the Balkans, they would have no idea where that is.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but America really is. You hear them say America first. You hear them say that that America is the center of the universe for Americans. And there are obviously some people like us who will come out here and we know what's going on and we want to get involved with international observation of elections and things like that. But the vast majority of the average American, they really only are focused on America. They really are very uneducated when it comes to what's going on with geopolitics.
Yeah, I get that in a way. I mean, people are concerned about their country, and most Americans think like they're center of the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you see like basketball, NBA, they thought it's a world championship. And when you win the NBA, you're a world champion in basketball. Yeah.
Serbia is really coming up in basketball. So you guys...
We were second. We almost beat USA in Olympics in 2024 in semifinals.
Yeah, and we had like pretty much a dream team to put together.
Back to the elections, of course. Yeah. Although this is interesting in basketball as well. We should talk about that. But you were in Aranđelovac or some other place? Because I know Džejk was in Kula. And
we were the same.
In Kula as well, together. As you said, there were a lot of observers. And that's in the place where there's like 25 or 30,000 voters. Mm-hmm. So really there was a lot of them. But, that's why those elections were so important, And I think you were in the hardest municipality where there was a hardest battle, between the opposition, the like students and their list and the ruling Serbian Progressive Party and Aleksandar Vučić. So
what I thought was interesting, because I had been reading the comments on the internet and watching some of the videos and the things that are coming out. And what I notice is that your turnout for this election is 65, 70%. When you talk about those kinds of numbers, this is almost, everybody in the entire
because
area.
80% of people live there.
Yeah.
80% of the people who are registered in the electoral system are like living there. Most of them, maybe some 20%, either they are not here, they're abroad, or they just went, moved out of the country, but didn't unsigned or something like that. So maybe most of the people voted. Like maybe 90% of the people who are living there voted.
That's one of my biggest points, though, is that if that is the turnout, if that is the size of your turnout, which is almost 100%, how can people claim that they are intimidated to go out to the polls, or that they're being influenced, or that they're scared for what they're going to vote for? You have 100% turnout. That is really good. So, I see everybody that's outside. It's a very active community in all of these different municipalities. But what I noticed is that if you have that big of turnout, obviously people are okay to get to the polls and vote.
Yeah, I saw, so many, older women that, were struggling to just walk, but they were, getting to the polls anyway. And I know you guys have the system where if somebody, is unable to make it, you send 3 people to go and watch over, to go watch them vote. So it's like that process is even secure. But I just, the enthusiasm that I saw from people going out to the polls and showing up, and, even if they were, physically, struggling a little bit, but they were able to go and cast their ballot, and they were very proud to do that. So it just shows, the pride the people have in, being a part of the elections.
Yeah, they're now more interesting in politics. I think it's mostly because everything that was happening in the country during last year. I don't know how you're familiar with that, with all the process and the protests and everything that was going on. But I think now people are more interested. And what's the average turnout in the United States?
Well, we just in a presidential election, we had the highest ever in 2020 when we mailed ballots to everybody. Imagine that. But it was still around 77% or so. It's the highest ever of all time. Usually we get maybe 60 to 70% in turnout on average. We had a special election in Tampa, where I live now, just last week. And this is not on the regular calendar. We only had 25% turnout. When we vote for our mayor in the city of Tampa, it's about 25% turnout. So very, very.
So it's
low.
it's like a couple thousand people decide the mayor. And a city in Tampa is a city of about 3 million. So when you have 3 million people, and the mayor is getting decided by just literally like 3,000 people max, maybe. And then I think that at one point they did a runoff election, so it had to go. It was like 1,000 people decided who was going to be the mayor. So there's not the same enthusiasm for the local elections. Yeah.
People are mostly interested in presidential elections and the elections for Congress, right?
Yes. Yeah. Presidential elections, and then midterm elections even have a lower turnout, but that it's still much better than whenever we have local elections. Like, it's a shame because your city council, your mayor, your school board, that they affect you more than what the national government is doing most of the time.
Yeah, I get that. What do you predict about the midterm elections? They're now in October, right?
Mm-hmm. November.
Yeah, November. What do you think it will be? Can Republicans keep?
Right now, it does not look good. The issue that we have is that historically, even over the past 100 years, if you have the president, the Senate, and Congress all in the same party, only like once or twice have they ever kept all three. It's very unusual. Democrat, Republican. People genuinely just blame the party in power, right? If you've been in power for 4 years and you're not doing what you need to do, we're going to vote you out and then send you home and try again. So I don't know how good it looks right now, but it's a long way away. Americans have a very short memory.
I think it's really going to depend on the war in Iran. I think if Trump can get out of the war within the next 30 days, people are, very upset about this war, and they're saying it's gone on too long. The war's only been going on less than a month, which for a war is a pretty short amount of time. So I think if he can get in and get out in 60 days and we're able to accomplish the objectives of, getting Iran to to decimate their, ballistic missiles and to get the IRGC out of power, then the American people with the short memories that we have, they'll forget that, oh, we didn't like this war, but then they'll be cheering it. And so that will really help the midterm elections.
Yeah, do you think that's the most of people in the U.S. think that war with Iran is unnecessary?
Yeah.
Very unpopular right now.
So Trump ran on no new wars. And then he went to war with Iran, which is one of the biggest countries to take on in a war. So, I mean, really outside of China and Russia, Iran's, that's like the big three. So I think that a lot of people were, upset and they're worried, and then they see gas prices going up. So they just are like, what can you do for me now? So they're like, you're not lowering gas prices, inflation's still increasing. And there are a lot of problems that need to be fixed. But the war in Iran, personally, I agree with it. I do think it's a good thing that we're doing it now. I just think that we need to be able to get the objectives done and get out in a short amount of time.
I mean, you support the action in Iran?
Yes, I do.
Actually, both of you, or?
I do, and it's just like she is saying, if we can get it done, it's almost like Venezuela, right? We're just coming off of just a month.
That was like a special military operation.
Yeah.
What Russians are talking about in Ukraine, special military operation, which is lasting like 4 years.
Yeah.
But this was actually a special military operation, which lasted one night.
But if you ask people in America before this happened, should we go do a special military operation in Venezuela? They would say, no, don't get ourselves involved in another war. Then if you tell them afterwards, we were able to do this in one night. Everybody in America loves what happened in Venezuela because we did it in one night. If we could do in Iran in a few weeks, people will feel the same way.
The people support like the thing that was done in Venezuela, because that was also in a way illegal in the terms of international law. But people don't look it that way, right?
We now have a new definition of international law. I don't know if you've heard President Trump talk about we have a giant army. We have the international law. We don't care about the UN anymore.
It's he reinstated the Monroe Doctrine, which is essentially, if it's in the Western Hemisphere, it's ours. So we are protecting our assets. And though Iran is not in the Western Hemisphere, it is, I think it's essential to take out some of these, to take out the IRGC, to take out the leadership. That is, people forget that Hezbollah, Hamas, and so many other terrorist organizations are all funded by Iran. They are the state sponsor of terrorism throughout the world. So it's not just, we're not just helping the Iranian people who have been oppressed and they have their protests. And I think about 30,000 people were killed just for protesting. So a lot of Americans don't realize how bad the situation is and how good things could be if we are able to get this done. And it may not happen overnight, but I do think that, the time is running out for the Iranian, the regime that's in power.
Do you think there are main objectives of the current Trump's administration to take down the regime in Iran, or there's also like something else besides that is China, because Iran is also a strong supporter of China, ally with the oil and gas export and everything.
So it's definitely pushing China out and making sure that we're the ones taking over that area, and that Iran and China aren't working together like that, and that we are the ones that have a more, the idea would be to have regime change so that it's a more pro-Western regime. Specifically, it doesn't have to be that pro-Western, just not a regime that is sponsoring terrorism. And then also
theocratic regime, actually, Islamic theocracy regime.
Yes, that's
we just want to be able to take away the sources of energy from China. That is what the United States' main objective is. Take Venezuela, take Iran, and then the production of energy that was going to go to China for all of the things they're doing. They have a lot more problems. And people will debate on what the largest threat to America is. In my opinion, and in many people's opinions in the U.S. military, it's China. And
that's what I believe as well.
A pending war. But this has been a concern for 10 years, 20 years. But people see the future of if there is a country and a regime that is mindset is to take over the world, and mindset is to communist, right, and to take over the United States as the number one power in the world. we are watching that, thinking more long term. And so sometimes people are very short-sighted, and like I said, Americans, very short memories, and maybe hopefully our military leaders and our leaders are looking more long-term, and this is kind of what you're seeing in Iran.
Yeah, but China is actually communist in a way, just in a political system. I mean, their economic system is not communistic. It's capitalistic, or they're very technologically advanced nation, but I get it that they're very big competition to the US, of course. And what do you think about Russian position and actual Russian politics? And is the Russia any kind of threat to the US? What do you think about the conflict in Ukraine? What's going on? We've seen that Trump had the solutions for conflict in
Personally, I think Russia is more of a threat to the United States, not in Ukraine as much as it is throughout. You see Russia having the military throughout the Sahel in Africa. And they're there so much, and they have such a presence that when
Burkina Faso and
Burkina Faso, they were holding a Russian
Traore,
flag.
I think he's called Traore. He's like also had a coup, because he's from the army.
When they did the coup, I remember they were holding the Russian flags, and they were like praising all the Russians for being there. So I think that's a big threat to the United States that we're not even looking at, as much. But then there's the war in Ukraine, which that's a difficult situation, because personally, I believe that had Barack Obama not instated the 2014 Orange Revolution, this never would have happened in the first place.
As well, this is the problem we have with America.
Do you think that's not good? Think Maidan and everything what happened in Ukraine? Do you think that's not a good thing?
This war is planned for a long time from America's standpoint. Going back to what she said, 2014. Reinstalling a new regime. And this is what you have to worry about in places like Serbia. Not necessarily saying it's going to happen right now, but this is the type of thing that America sometimes will start to meddle in the elections.
We had it before in history. We had the 5th October 2000.
Yeah,
America organized it. Really, it's not. Yeah,
it's not our fault. We were young.
Yeah,
we're not in charge.
We weren't involved.
Even the Republicans weren't there in the government. I mean, back there was Clinton administration still, I think, in October 2000. I mean, Clinton bombed Serbia, of course, in 1999. But I think also George Bush came in the late 2000.
And
November.
And when you look at Russia, when you look at Ukraine, for us, we talk about America has a very short memory. It was not that long ago that World War I and World War II, and we are fighting alongside of Russia. They were our friends when we were fighting the Nazis. Yeah. Now, and this is something I've written about this at the beginning of the war. Now I am supposed to give my tax dollars. We've given them a lot of money into Ukraine, a lot of money in Ukraine, and they have leftover Nazi battalions. And we're supposed to give our money to the Nazis, the actual Nazis in Ukraine, to fight the Russians who helped us beat the Nazis back then. So it's all very complicated when you really look at that kind of thing. But
actually, they are Nazis. I mean, as a battalion or something like that, similar, they are actual Nazis.
Yeah, but you don't hear this from the EU, right? You do not hear this from America. Like, they try to cover up the fact that there's very problematic people in the Ukraine, and they are funneling a lot of money. Who knows how much money has not actually gone to the war and has gone to buy Zelensky a house in Palm Beach, where I'm from. You buy a $30 million mansion.
I heard that. Corruption is huge in Ukraine.
Huge corruption. So I've been against the Ukraine war since the beginning, and it's become more unpopular as time has gone on. At first, you saw a lot of Americans, therefore the Ukraine war. Oh, Russia's bad. Russia's bad. Russia's bad. As it went on, it was like, this is a lot of money for us to spend on a war. And I think this is where Donald Trump is now getting himself into trouble with Iran, because of the fact that people were like, stop spending money on foreign wars, stop spending money on things that are not our infrastructure and our lives. And now you're in Iran, but this one's still not over.
Yeah, I think with Russia, I mean, I have a little more of a nuanced take on it. Like, it's bad. Russia shouldn't be invading Ukraine. But I think the people that were living in the Donetsk region, like, I have friends that were from there, and they said they were like, we've been under war since 2014. Yeah. So they don't.
People forget that war didn't start in 2022. That it was actually a civil war between Ukrainians, Western Ukrainians, and Eastern Russians and Ukrainians from 2014 from Maidan Revolution.
Yeah, and my friends who are from there, when I asked them, do you consider yourself Russian or Ukrainian? They go, I'm Soviet. They were like, I grew up under the Soviet Union. They're like, I don't know. They're like, I don't know. I don't care.
I think communist sentiment is hard, still strong there.
They don't really have a communist sentiment. It's just more they're like, I grew up under the Soviet Union and I came to America, there, and then the people that they have still living there, they're Russian and Ukrainian. They're like sister nations, or like brother nations. So the war is very unfortunate because the human tax that's going on, the fact that a generation of young men are getting wiped out for this war is very sad. But what was unfortunate to me is under the Biden administration did not see America trying to come to trying to be a negotiator and trying to negotiate terms to an end of the war. That's, to me, at the end of the day, land is going to be exchanged. There's no way that Ukraine is going to be able to hold all of that land.
Russia annexed now the four territories, Donetsk, Lugansk, and all of that, and Crimea. So I don't think they're going to get it back.
No.
Yeah.
There's no chance for Ukraine to get back those territories.
So you have a lot of people on the left who've been advocating for the United States to get so involved that we do not give up any land in Ukraine at all.
Yeah.
But that
just mean a lot of dead Ukrainians.
Exactly.
A lot of money spent. Yeah. And so this is there's a political reality that many of us recognized many years ago, but people are starting to slowly come around to, okay, maybe they're not going to be able to take all of their land back. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. And I think it's really just unfortunate that for 4 years, it felt like under the Biden administration, we didn't have any American presence throughout the world. And then when America, so people want to say America first, and they want to be like almost go back to isolationism. But we can't do that because it's a global world. And when America isn't present, who fills that void? Well, Russia and China do. And we saw that, China's starting to take over a lot of places in Africa, starting to take, they're building their Belt and Road Initiative. So in Russia, they're taking, they took over Ukraine. Iran used their proxies to launch the October 7th attacks. The world, really had a lot of issues when we aren't there and don't have a strong presence. So that's why I do support the war in Iran. I think that America should have a strong presence throughout the world. And I think that, if we can do this right, it would be, historical and would completely reorganize the world order.
And in a few weeks, you'll be talking about how America went in and took out Cuba. Maybe.
I mean, things are getting out of control, with Trump, because he started the year with Maduro and everything.
Yeah.
We're in March, and you already had a huge war, and now Saudi Arabia is going on the side with Iran and everything, and it seems like it's going to escalate. I'm afraid if it escalates, in that region, that it could push some other countries to join in and have a world conflict. That's always dangerous.
I'm definitely very concerned about that. I thought Saudi Arabia was, starting to side with the United States. It seemed like they were starting to side with us because they were upset that Iran was attacking their oil bases. But it's just fascinating to me to see Saudi Arabia with, that they would be fighting alongside the United States and Israel.
They're different kind of Muslims, These are Sunni Muslims and these are Shia. So what's I'm interesting about Florida. Mostly we know that Florida is a Republican country. It's rarely a swing state, right? It's not a swing state. Actually, it's rarely been Democrat.
We are the last bastion of freedom, is what I like to call Florida.
Well, we used to be a swing state, and then we were a big swing state up until really 2020 and during COVID. And then we became fully Republican.
It's all around DeSantis when he got and then COVID and everything. And we really switched over to being a very red city.
It's like a stronghold of the Republican Party, Florida.
Well, you're seeing right now.
Sure to win the elections there.
We have a phrase. We said "Make America Florida." That was our phrase. And now we're starting to get to "Make the World Florida," because we have Donald Trump, Florida resident. We have Marco Rubio as our Secretary of State. Susie Wiles, James Blair, all these people in the cabinet, all from Florida. We have exported so many of our talented people into the national arena and then becoming the international arena are all from Florida. And because of the way that Governor DeSantis handled COVID, and we were the one place, and we were the crazy young Republican organizations that refused to shut down and refused to let the city shut down or the mayor stop us, and we still put on boat parades and did all these crazy things. We had the Super Bowl in Tampa in 2021 out in the streets, just
which our team won.
Yes, trying to refuse to listen to some of the very let's just call them authoritarian measures that were going on during COVID. And that really set the tone for how Florida is going to continue to lead as really the last place before some of these regulations and these things that you start seeing in the EU that you guys hear a lot about. Where they're going to be the last place
we were the place that was fighting back against globalism and the globalist elites that were trying to push all the COVID measures, and Florida said no. And so that's why so many people moved to Florida, and that's how it became so Republican, is that all these people that
a lot of conservative people and how to say classical liberals or something like that.
Yes, that did.
I mean the leftist liberals, but the classical ones.
Well, the left also was where they were removed from Florida because they thought that we were crazy. So then the Democrats, they moved away, and all of the good Republicans moved to Florida. So we had a big switch.
Yeah.
I heard that also a lot of, let's say, people moved from California, which are liberals, to Texas.
Yes.
So Texas before was strictly Republican, and now in some cities it become a more Democrat because of that.
Yeah.
You know, but they moved because they were against the taxes, which was done by Democrats, how to say.
Yeah.
What we found is that during COVID, if you moved from California or one of these places, you were probably a Republican, a good Republican. You just were stuck in California.
You were newly woken up to being Republican. You realized, oh my gosh, I've been a liberal. What was I thinking? And then you became Republican and moved.
I think that's the situation in New York now when the Zohar Mandani took place, that a lot of people sold their properties and moved to Florida as well, or both some property.
Yeah, we're turning Miami into New York. I'm 35 years old. It's always been New Yorkers moving to Miami, but now we just accelerated even more.
You don't deal with the cultural conflict in Florida as well as in other states, like those conflicts between the leftists and the conservatives. How do you look on that? You know, in the States, mostly we see now what was going on in, I think, Minneapolis with the migrants and everything, with ICE and everything. So there was a lot of conflicts. I mean, cultural conflicts between the radical leftists and the conservatives, Republicans. You don't get to feel that in Florida.
A little bit. It's still happening all over the country, but Florida is an interesting place because historically, I'm from South Florida near Miami. We have always had Cuban refugees from, who are very Republican that when they come here. We have people from Latin America, Brazil, Venezuela, all of these places. Many of them were escaping dictatorship. So a lot of them come, and then they are the most American patriotic people that we have. We have good immigration over the past 35 years. Now, the last 4 or 5 years has been crazy, open borders through Mexico, all of these things. But when you have the situation in Minnesota, right, where we're bringing people from Somalia.
Yeah, I think the Somalis are the biggest issue.
That's a very big culture clash, because I have friends from Minnesota, and they were like, just a few years ago, it was all, generally Minnesotans or people that grew up there, and then now they're seeing a whole bunch of Somalians, and they're hearing the call to prayer 5 times a day, and it's blasting over the loudspeaker, and they're just like, what happened? Like, how did this happen? And it happened very quickly. They imported a lot of Somalian refugees.
And one of the issues is that, again, in Florida, when the Cubans come to Miami, they go to church, right? They go to the Catholic church.
Yeah, they're Catholic.
And everybody just mixes, and there's much more of an assimilation. We don't have Somalians coming in and putting the prayer over the loudspeaker. And I think that is one of the big differences that we see in Florida versus other places in the country.
It has to do with the religion, because people from Venezuela and Cuba are both Catholic, conservative in a way. So they're like some more migration that you wish for, and not from Africa or from Mexico.
Well, so growing up in Tampa, we always had a pretty big community of Saudis, Palestinians, people from just the Middle East in general. There was always a decent sized community. Like, I'm Armenian. We had an Armenian community. We even had I had a lot of friends who are Bosnian. So we have a lot of diversity, but it never was like an issue. They just were quiet. If they were Muslim, they were quietly Muslim. You know, it wasn't something like where they were taking over the whole community and blasting the call to prayer and trying to enforce their beliefs onto everybody else. So it's an interesting thing that has been happening, and we see in Minnesota and New York, these like culture clashes. It's very recent, and it seems like, to me, it feels like something that the globalists are doing, and that they're trying to push this agenda of we need to push these Muslim immigrants into, you know, America, into, you know, formerly, you know, what would be considered Christian nations, and try to, you know, force this assimilation, you know, on, or not assimilation, but try to force.
Because assimilation is not working.
Yeah, try to force this culture clash and just allow it.
When you cannot win the election, and you start to lose the people, and you cannot get more voters, you can import voters, right? And this is what we're having in America. This is why our election laws are so important. Why do they make it so you don't need to show an ID to vote? Because they can take somebody from another country who will vote for them, or that they can take their vote and bring them into America, because they're not winning over with the ideological and philosophical arguments to win over the American people. And it's happening all in Europe as well. You're seeing a big populist movement in all over the world at this point. They've seen what Trump has done, and that has spread in many, many, many different countries. And I think this terrifies the globalist and the leftist idea that you can just have one big global order that all listens to their wacky philosophies.
What do you think about the current administration of our president Vučić in Serbia and the politics of Serbia? Is his policy trying to push with a bigger cooperation with the states, with the current Trump administration? What's your look on that, dude?
Well, you in Serbia, you have a very interesting geopolitical positioning on a map, right? You're very close to the EU. You're trying to get EU membership, right? Sometimes, and then you have you have Russia and connection there, and then I'm sure China is trying to get influence into this region as well. And then you have America, which we had very good relationships with America for a long time. And then, like you said, you go back to the 90s or in early 2000s, and we were bombing in Belgrade.
We were allies in World War II.
Yeah.
Allies,
And so what I would say about your president is that, I encourage everybody that they should make better friends with America, because I think that no matter when we have maybe a bad 4 years with Joe Biden and we start to go off of the train rails a little bit, we tend to come back towards the America and our capitalist philosophy, and we're going to try to make it work in the rest of the world. I think that when you start to tie yourself in with autocracies in places like China, they're going to take advantage of you even more than as a global chess piece, instead of maybe a partner like we could be in America.
I was just gonna say, I tend to like Vučić. Like, I think that whenever I see him speak, he seems to know when to align with Trump and try to make good ties with him. But also, I've seen him in some speeches like push back against America and push back against like what we're doing. So I think he's a good. He seems to be a good president. He seems to be stepping up as a good world leader especially for the Balkan region.
So we're trying to make like a coalition of sovereignists now here in Europe with Serbia, Hungary, Slovakia, and those leaders seems to be very close to Trump, and on the other side you have like European Union, which has like an agenda, which is all without any, second thoughts, how to say.
And that is what the president should be focused on is Serbia first, right? And being, and like you said, its own nation, sovereign nation with its own agenda for its own people. The second that he starts to maybe try to balance, being friends with the EU, we'll compromise here or compromise here, that is when you start to find issues.
Well, we do the same,
Yeah.
because that's why we don't want to import sanctions on Russia,
Yeah.
because Russia is also our ally in a way, They're not accepting, they're not recognizing the so-called independence of Kosovo and similar stuff. They're supporting us on the international field. So that's why those relations and historical of course, relations.
Yeah.
Religion plays a lot of role as well. So that's something important to us, for our,
Is the EU still trying to get you to stop smoking in indoors? Are they giving up on that, or is that still?
I don't think that's functioning. I don't think that's working for us. So I think we have some regulations, smoking, not smoking, but nobody.
Yeah, we were at lunch the other day, and they had a sign that said "No smoking," and one of the guys was smoking like right on top of it. So yeah.
We don't care about it.
No.
That's typical Serbia.
It's their Serbian way of life is cigarette in Rakvija, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're in that matters, we're very familiar with the food, the drinks, and everything going out, nightlife, when we're talking about politics, because I know you have Armenian origins.
Yes.
I know how that's important to you as well. Kosovo is important to us because, that's the land of our ancestors, which all the Serbian heritage monasteries are there from the 13th, 14th century. The biggest, most churches and monasteries are on Kosovo. That's our cradle. So that's similar, like for Armenian people, the cradle is a part of today Turkey's territory, which will taken away, from Armenians. So.
Yes, and it's a shame that when you lose part of your land, and for Armenia, we lost a lot of people during the genocide. We lost 2 million people, and we lost a lot of land. So I think on the Armenian money has Mount Ararat, but Mount Ararat is in Turkey, so many Armenians want to go and see Mount Ararat, but they're not even allowed to because the Turks keep them out. So,
I think the border is closed. Armenia. You can see it from Yerevan. I've been there. You can see from Yerevan, you can see Ararat perfectly.
Yeah, you can see it, but you can't actually go and visit because they keep the border closed to Armenians. So it is. I completely understand and empathize with wanting to have that land that is your historical and ancestral land, and being able to go and visit it and claim it as yours. And quite frankly, I think if Turkey just gave us, the mountain back, gave us Mount Ararat back, a lot of people
would be satisfied with that.
A lot of people would be a lot happier. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. We think as well with the monasteries and everything, we're always trying to get some exclusion of monasteries out of their government, so-called government, we say like that in Pristina, and most of the people have security problems, the Serbs down there. And I don't know if you heard about Washington Agreement from 2020, but that was actually agreement upon which was President Trump as a deal with President Vučić as well, and some of the Pristina government, which allows a better connection, like economic and everything, which was good for us, for Belgrade and for Serbs. Unfortunately, later Biden administration came to power, and that this kind of agreement wasn't anymore in power.
Yeah.
So I think we should get back to those kind of relations.
What percentage of Serbian people do you think believe that Kosovo is part of Serbia, should be part of Serbia again?
95%.
95% doesn't matter.
No, I'm kidding. I mean, we have people who don't think that, but I think maybe around 90% for sure.
Doesn't matter
if you ask them, yes.
It doesn't matter if they're a leftist or anything. They still believe.
Leftist, not so much.
Not so much.
You have a lot of leftists who doesn't think that way. I would say 85 until 90%. But most of the people don't think it in a way which are consequences of everything.
Yeah.
They would always say, and we will always say that Kosovo is Serbia. It is in our mind and everything, but we are also aware that a lot of consequences should be to us if we could fight for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what we had in the 90s. That's what the problem was, because people were on referendum and they voted that no foreigners should interrupt in the question of Kosovo and Metohija. That's Serbian land. Nobody should interrupt, but later because of the Clinton administration, Madeleine Albright, and everything what happened, we got the bombing, you know. I mean, people didn't want that, you know, but they didn't know either the consequences. I think today people should be and are really much more, you know, like cautious about it.
Obviously, Kosovo, you know, to you guys will always be part of Serbia, but you're not trying to take it by force.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's not today 90% Albanians over that, you know. Unfortunately, historically, Serbians were expelled from that land in the Tito's time, in the Ottoman time, they were prosecuted, killed and everything. And so we that's because of this historic struggle, we are now facing these kind of problems today. It was very pleasant talking with you about it. I think we can talk a lot, but we don't have much time. Hopefully I will see you here in my show again in Serbia, Novi Sad. You're always welcomed, and not much to say, but thank you a lot again.
Thank you for having us. Anytime that you need us or have any questions about what's going on in America, feel free to give us a call.
Yeah, of course, we can hear each other from Zoom or something like that, you know.
Anytime.
Discuss politics.
Anytime. It's great talking to you and very much enjoyed doing your show and hope to do it again. So thank you.
Thank you, Mišel. Nice hearing that. Vama hvala, poštovani gledaoci, na praćenju. Ovo je bila još jedna epizoda Novo doba i sjajni Džejk Hofman i Mišel Sasuni iz Nacionalne Federacije mladih republikanaca sa Floride. Vi ostanite svakako uz dokumentarnu televiziju i do sljedećeg viđenja. Svako dobro.